All right. What's going on, party people? This is your man Griff. We are here with Amy from Cyberize It, and we just gonna hop straight in. We're gonna let her introduce herself because y'all know I'm not that formal, so and I be messing stuff up. So we're gonna let her introduce herself. But the whole point of this here YouTube video today is to get some straight, real, concrete answers about Ron. She's going to let us know about Ron in Georgia because just before we came on, she informed me of some stuff about Ron in Georgia, about how notaries can do that, as well as anything else she knows and believes that is important and pertinent for you to understand and know with regards to Ron. And the main reason why I did this because someone earlier this week asked a question or made a comment in one of the videos stating that they was told that Ron is going to be taken over. So the first person I thought of to ask was Amy. And I hit her up and I was like, yo, they told me Ron is taking over. And one of the things that I understand, and she'll clarify whether this statement that I'm saying is correct. What I always understood about Ron is that if you're going to do Ron or any kind of e-notarizations, the person who is receiving the final documents are the ones they have to be willing to accept a e-notarized document. So a lot of people think that you can just go get Ron and get notarized documents notarized online. But if the person who's receiving it, who's requesting that document, doesn't want to accept it, then it's sort of hard to do. So I know the lender has to want it in the mortgage realm. The lender, the title company, those are the two main people, and then also the courthouse where it's going to be getting recorded at. And when I first started, there was an issue in New Kent County here in Virginia where the courthouse in Virginia in New Kent County didn't want to accept Ron notarized documents, and somebody with some power had to talk with them, and then they started doing it. So we're gonna throw it on over to Amy. So go for it.
Well, thanks for having me here. My name's Amy, and for those that don't know me, I'm actually a 20-some plus year notary here in Ohio. I've got my loan signing and my Ron endorsements, and then I created the platform, Cyberize It, a remote online notarization platform, and it's been kicking my butt, but it's all good. It's all good. So, but yeah, it is a platform open in 19 states at this current moment, with 5 pending and a few more that I'm getting ready to start on. And we are trudging through, and I'm glad to be here and answer some of those unknown questions, because one of the things that I had to do was learn what each state allows and doesn't allow, and what caveats there are to doing a Ron transaction. And Griff, you are totally right. It is the person who's receiving it has to accept that electronic notarization. But when you're asking someone if it's legal or if they'll take it, one of the biggest mistakes that notaries make is we use the notary terminology.
Okay.
We are really bad about it. If I go to somebody who's never heard of Ron and I say, well, will you take this through remote online notarization? They don't know what that means.
Correct.
So if you go to them and say, well, will you accept electronic signatures on this? They know what that means. So
Okay.
you got to term it down so that they understand what they're agreeing to. And then a lot of times the next question is, but if you're doing electronic signatures, how do you get your stamp? And you go, oh, it's 2021. I have an electronic stamp too. And they go, oh, okay. And then it's a lot easier.
Mhm.
So
Gotcha.
understanding how to phrase it so that that client can explain it better will make it more successful.
Understand. So earlier we was talking about Georgia, and one of my heartburns was a lot of people are trying to teach Ron courses, and they don't necessarily inform the people who are taking them whether or not it's allowed in their state. So what I've learned is that they're saying, I'm gonna teach this course, but it's up to you to figure out whether or not it works in your state. Okay, cool. But then the person takes the course not knowing that it's not, and then they can't get their money back. And I don't like people being taken advantage of. So, and Georgia was one of the areas that a lot of people was being taught or told that they can be a Ron. And I know up until you just spoke to me that only attorneys at one point was able to do that. So clarify for everybody the Georgia issue.
Will do. So in Georgia, during the COVID, the pandemic, they temporarily allowed Ron for all of the notaries, or not notaries, attorneys. So be clear, for the attorneys in Georgia, they could do it no holds barred. Okay. But for notaries, they had to be under the instruction or guidance of an attorney in order to perform a Ron transaction. So they had to be employed by an independent contractor of, have some kind of correlation with an attorney in order for that Ron to be legal. Now, that was a temporary guidance order, and I don't know if they've extended that because I know COVID keeps going up down there. But at this moment, I would have to go back and make sure that that's still in effect. But they were looking at the possibility of doing it long term, but I have not heard that they're putting on the books. But so at this current moment, a typical commissioned notary with no guidance, no association with an attorney is not legally able to perform a remote online notarization.
Gotcha.
In the state of Georgia.
Gotcha. Okay, and see, that is key. So the whole point is this, and again, I'm not against people making money or teaching whatever, because people are going to do what they do. I just believe in full disclosure that anybody who's trying to educate somebody, they should at least put forth the effort to know whether or not somebody's, especially with all the different variations in notary laws, to me, it's just very important that anybody who wants to be an educator within the realm of notary, you do your homework as an educator to make sure that people aren't spending their money aimlessly with you and then can't execute that said training. That doesn't do you good, and then it opens you up for certain liabilities and just bad name, point blank. So double check people when people are talking about, I'm gonna teach you notary stuff. Ask the hard questions. Don't just accept it as, oh, okay, they know what they're doing, they know all my rules and guidelines, and they're not going to lead me down this a pass into the abyss. They may not be intentionally doing it, but everybody has a responsibility. So that's real good to know about Georgia. Now, I'm in Virginia, so is there anything that I need to know about that? Now, I will say this here. The one thing that I've been struggling with is and primarily use .verify right now. I use .verify. Everybody has their own their own laptop or device, but .verify won't allow foreign nationals. Okay, they won't allow foreign nationals because they won't get through the KBA check, no social security number, no credit history. But then, and I was asking a question about that, and somebody sent me some information about doing credible witness. And looking at the way .verify is set up, I'm like, okay, the only way I can let somebody into a session is to say that I personally know them, because if I say no, then it's going to want to send them to KBA. But if I say I personally know them, then what's the point of the KBA or the credible witness? And, so I was getting confused as to how Virginia notaries are doing credible witness for Iran, not necessarily on pretending to .verify, but any platform, and what was the criteria to do credible witness? Because I always thought you had to physically look at the ID to make sure that the ID from the credible witnesses wasn't fake. Over to you.
All right. So first off, in Virginia, I'll tell you an interesting fact before I answer your technical question. Okay.
Okay.
Did you know that Virginia is the only state that allows their Ron notaries to notarize a document outside of the state if they're physically traveling? So you could be in Florida or Hawaii or Spain and notarize a document legally through Ron, as long as that document's going to Virginia.
Right. Now that I knew you could face-to-face notarize a document if I'm in Florida or somewhere, if that document was going to be used in Virginia. I didn't know about the Ron part.
Yep, they allow it for Ron as well, but you have to know that that document's going to Virginia.
Okay.
So As long as you know that, your doors are open, but you're the only state that allows that. So
Well, that's good.
that's your little kick. Now,
Cool.
another thing is they did change your notarial ID validation laws this year. I don't know if you know that,
I
but it
haven't heard.
used to be everyone wanted a Virginia notary because a Virginia notary didn't have to do KBA.
Okay.
And now that's not so cut and dry. Now the jury's still out on exactly the terminology and how they do it, but now Virginia says you have to do 2 ID validations, and here's a list of the approved ID validations. KBA, ID credential analysis, a digital certificate, and then there's one other, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. But the platform has to do 2 of the 4. And we're still ironing out the
Okay.
extent of what that means, but they did remove that caveat of no KBA at all. So
Okay.
that's something a lot of
Yeah.
notaries don't know that got
Okay.
enacted this year. Now,
Yeah.
as far as credible witness, the availability of credible witness over a RON transaction varies state to state. And I'll give you a for instance. Montana, Ohio, Tennessee will allow a singular credible witness as long as the credible witness validates through KBA and ID validation. The
Okay.
signer does not have to, only the credible witness. And the credible witness has to perform the oath that they personally know, blah, 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 this person. They are, in fact, the true intent and legal signer of the document, et cetera, just like if you were in person.
Mm-hmm.
Florida doesn't allow it at all.
No credible witness.
No credible witness. Every notary in Florida has to do KBA and ID validation. No
Gotcha.
bypass. All right. No get out of jail free card for them.
Okay.
But then Virginia allows it, but you have to have 2 credible
2 people.
witnesses.
Right. That part I knew.
Yep, 2 of them. So 2 people have to go through ID validation and KBA or whatever 2 your platform uses in order to swear in the third person. So it becomes encumbersome.
Complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because with Doc Verify, you either know the people or you don't. And there's no option to say, I know the 2, I don't know the 2 credible witnesses, but the third person. So it's almost like and this is the part that I was the state of Virginia couldn't give me the answer, but I was like, it seems to me that I will have to do a separate session with just the credible witness to say, okay, do you know Earl Jones? And then they say, okay, yes, we know Earl Jones. But the problem is Earl Jones is supposed to be there. If I'm not, yeah. So I'm like, how do I do a credible witness online, at least on Dot Verify, that says, all I ask, do you know the people that you put in here that you want to send a session to? It's either yes or no. If I say yes, then I'm concerned that legally I'm lying and saying that I know them. How do I do that with the credible witness and not get hemmed up?
Yeah. So on that platform specifically, when you click personally known, there becomes up a box that says ID or it's a free form text. That's where you would put credible witness validation, personally known. How do you personally know them? You will personally know them once that credible witness provides testimony.
Gotcha. Understand.
So that's that area, and that exports into your journal. And that's again, that comes back to terminology. Maybe they shouldn't have said personally known. On mine it just says bypass KBA, and then the reason box pops up, and now you have a reason, and it's required that you put a reason in there as to why you are bypassing, and then that gets locked into that journal entry, and you can pull that up every single time.
Gotcha. So that would be, so that's how I would do it if I was doing a foreign national.
Yes.
Okay. Because I get hit up a lot from a lot of the Florida title companies, or this one particular, I think they're out of Florida, but they deal with a lot of Florida properties of a foreign national who has left the country before selling the property. They decide, hey, I'm going back to wherever. And then they're like, oh, I want to sell this property. So then the title officer in Florida looks at Virginia's law and says, oh, y'all can take foreign ID. And then they want me to do the remote online notarization, but the platform doesn't accept the foreign ID. You see, so and that's where so I try to avoid that right now until I know specifically the best way to do it. But okay, so that's what's going on. So that makes sense.
And you want to hear why? You want to hear why there's some limitations on who can and can't do this. So when we look at KBA, which for anyone out there that doesn't know, that's knowledge-based authentication. These are individual quizzes generated through public records. And these questions come out to be like, what color is your Toyota? Or what state did you live in between this year and this year? Or what county goes with this address? And it's an address that you used to live at. And these questions are generated from public records, such as home ownership, vehicle ownership, utility bills, credit cards, or even court cases. So all of that data is sitting in the world of public realm. And these industries, these businesses have the ability to centralize and narrow down a person and generate random questions with random answers in order for that person to answer this quiz. The problem comes into play is when someone is not a United States citizen and they come and they purchase property or things, but they list everything in their business name, their LLC.
Right.
Well, once they do that, nothing's in their private name. It's in their business name. Okay. So when you do that general search for that person, you're not going to find a utility bill in Jim Bob's name because it was under Jim Bob LLC. Right. And so that limits their ability to generate those questions. Okay. So a lot of platforms instituted other parameters such as credit history with a social security number. And then they do, I don't really want to call it even a soft pull, but it allows them to research those areas of their credit history that are open to public consumption. Okay. And generate more questions than someone who doesn't use credit history. Gotcha. Okay. Now, this public record information is freely accessible in the USA. And to an extent, we can get some public record information from Mexico. All right. Okay. But importing private information from other countries is not allowed. Canada is not going to let us look at their public records. Spain is not going to let us look at their public records. So anyone that's, I run into a situation, client's Canadian, his cousin who's always lived in the USA just passed away. Client is next of kin. Client has never lived in the USA. Right. Well, now we can't generate those questions for the client because he has never been here, never set foot in the USA. So now we have to utilize that credible witness aspect as long as it meets our state law for credible witnessing. Right. Okay. But that's where the hurdle comes into play with what validation the platforms will accept or don't accept. And they add those levels in there to make it more successful for you. But at the same time, it makes it a little harder because if someone is a foreign national but doesn't have a social security number, but has done things like came and went to school, rented a car, had a utility bill, well, now we can pull KBA for them. Okay. But because they don't have a social, you can't, but I can. Okay. Because I don't require it. So it really, you have to look at the type of clientele you look at getting and then the type of opportunity that your platform allows you to utilize. Right. So that you can then facilitate that transaction. And you know what? Maybe one platform's not enough. Sometimes it's not. I know I have two, but you know, it's one of those things where you need that. but it gets expensive when you do that.
Correct.
So
Yeah, it
make
does.
sure, make sure if you're looking into that or that is something you're considering, make sure that you have the business to support that. Otherwise, you're going to feel very frustrated when you're doing all this and you're not getting any bang for your buck.
Correct. Yeah, and that was one of the things, and that's why I just leaned on dot verify because one, I like the fact that both parties have to be on their own independent device. I know some places, and I couldn't remember whether it was Virginia or not, but some people didn't like the idea of them just hopping on one video stream, everybody just poking their head in. They wanted each person to authenticate themselves independently, record independently, and all of that. So you don't have people running in and out and everything, and all of that. So I haven't had a problem with dot verify. The only issue that there has been, it's been centered around individuals lying to me that they're US citizens,
Mhm.
not telling me that they're not US citizens, because I will send them the video that this law firm put out on how to use dot verify to go through the KBA. And I will send them that to say, hey, follow this video so you can understand what's going on. I will send them the link to dot verify that says this is the information you need to have, this is what's allowed. And then they will say we're good. And then I'm sitting here waiting for the thing spinning. And I'm like, why you haven't finished doing the KBA? Oh, I don't have a social. I thought you, you mean, they was for real? They really wanted me to have a social? I was like, yeah, that's why I sent you the video. That I said everything you have to. Oh, I didn't realize all I have is a visa from Venezuela. I'm like, that's not going to work, So I done wasted my credits trying to get them in there, and I understand that's where a lot of people don't like dot verify because of their credit system and all of that. But when it works, when everybody is honest and doing what they're supposed to do, I have not had a problem with it. For the, once they get authenticated, then it will only be if they got a cell phone, they got all cracked up and they trying to do a cell phone on a cracked screen and they can't, hit the buttons and everything for them to sign. That's where the problem comes in. Also, before is the platform itself. I think a lot of the platforms are solid. I think I signed up with you recently, but I don't think the platforms themselves are an issue. It's just, the person's got to have the tools.
Some kind of technology skill. And if they don't, the notary needs to have enough ability to communicate how to do it so
Right.
that that client can step through. It's one of those things where you, as the notary, you need to have that visual in the head. What is that client seeing? All right, on the screen in the top right, there's a required fields. Does it say one? Does it say two? Does it say they're complete? And then, all right, is there a cookie error on the bottom covering up that submit button? Did it sign with the wrong email or the address? Okay, well, the signature. Well, then you need to clear it. And here's how you clear it. Here's how you go
Mhm.
back. And you have to almost do that from memory because on some you are the tech support, you're doing it.
Right.
And and for instance with Doc Verify, I love the platform too. One of the hurdles that I had to learn how to overcome was that ear piercing feedback sound when they
Okay.
are too close together.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
understanding how to do that or how to shut one video off so that they
Hmm.
can share a video stream.
Right.
That was an interesting aspect that I learned as well. So, um, it's a great program though. I really loved it as far as the functionality of the platform. Totally loved it.
Yeah,
So,
I had no problems with it at all, and I know that a lot of notaries don't like dot verify primarily because they're not funneling people to you like One Notary and Signex and some of the other ones, or Notarize. They're not sending people your way. So like mine is like what, $50 a month, because I started month to month. And then I didn't switch over to the year plan before they raised the price up. So it's actually still cheaper for me to be month to month, because now the year plan is like 700 and some bucks. So I said, well, I'm gonna just stay month to month. They didn't bother me. I ain't bothering them. And I'm getting the
Mhm.
business in. I'm getting probably 1 or 2 signings a month um on, to do that actually covers the cost. And I'm starting to, and I have this one client, they have people that just need a POA done.
Mhm.
There's one signature on there for a POA because they're doing a real estate closing and they need a special POA for that person. And a lot of times it's a military member overseas. So I just hop on 8 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, whatever, do it, make me a few bucks, and keep going. So that in and of itself, doing 2 or 3 of those a month will actually pays for it. That pays for what I'm doing, and then a couple of real estate closings each month and all of that. So now this concept of Ron taking over and there'll be no more face-to-face notarizations. And I said, okay, when I looked at, I believe you had a map on yours, I believe it was your site, that showed all the different states that have Ron in them, and those who don't. And I'm like, okay, so what happens with the notaries who just only want to do face to face? Because there's some notaries who admit to me they're not tech savvy and they don't want to do anything online. So I'm like, okay, you right there, they're going to cut them out. So what's the idea or the prognosis of it being forever and kick everybody else off of face to face?
Well, I have good news and bad news on that. So it really depends on your perspective. Um, so I am part of an organization that is working towards the acceptance of Ron for mortgages and notes and closings. And I can say that the goal of these major organizations is to convert to a Ron setting, because they find it's faster, they find it's easier, and it's just, for as far as the lender's perspective,
Mm-hmm.
it's safer. It can be tracked, it can be recorded, and they can house that and they can, utilize that for years to come. Whereas if you're doing it in person, if something ever happens, you may or may not be able to pull that notary back in. So life may happen and you may not be here anymore. And
Right.
then all we've got is this journal that may or may not be complete, or may not even be still around, you know? So as far as lenders go, they want it. Is it going to happen overnight? No.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's going to take work. In addition to that, when you're dealing with clients, the clients need to understand the technology and understand that they're comfortable with it. So I don't
Correct.
think it's going to be we're going to flip a switch and every single client is going to go this way. But I do think we're going to flip a switch and every client's going to be told, we can do this completely online. And here's
Right.
what we do. And then the in person will be a backup.
Gotcha.
So, but I don't see that happening I project 3 years. I
Okay.
personally project 3 years before it actually goes through all the motions. Whether or not that's a true timeline, I don't know. That's just my interpretation of where we're
Mm-hmm.
at with it all. Um, the new best practices should be published for Ron next year, early next year. And then once those best practices are put into place, then the mortgage industry will start looking more and more into focusing on that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can say there are lots of laws in place. Like, I'll give you a great one. Did you
Okay.
know that California has a law on its books that says electronic notarization is legal since 2000, since the year 2000?
Wow.
Now, it's legal for another notary to do it in their world, but not for one of their notaries. So they
It's
can
legal
take
for
it.
somebody outside of California, but not
Mhm.
inside. I've
Yeah.
heard that, but I didn't realize it was for based off of that 2000 rule law.
Yeah, they have a California Civil Code that was enacted in 2000. And I'm going to get the code number here. Um, and that's one of the things that I have and I use when I'm talking to someone, because I get that question a lot is, well, I'm in a state that doesn't allow that. And I'm like, okay, but that's not how that works. That state just has the limitation on their own notary, not on the client. For the client to do it, they can be anywhere. And it doesn't matter. Here we go. California Civil Code 1633.11. And it was enacted January 1st of 2000. And it specifically says, I'm going to shortcut it here. In addition to the electronic signature to be notarized, the electronic signature of a notary public, together with all the information required to be included in a notarization by other applicable law. And it says, if a law requires a signature be notarized, the requirement is satisfied with respect to electronic signature.
Gotcha.
So that is 1633.11. In case anyone needs to look at that. But I keep that handy because a person could be physically standing in California, connect online to a notary that is commissioned Ron.
You're talking about this one, correct?
Yep, that is correct. And they can legally sign their documents. And it is part of that state's law that allows this. So keep in mind, even Ohio has it. You know, all of the states have these laws or bylaws that stipulate electronic notarization, even if they don't allow their notaries to perform it.
Gotcha. Okay. So they have a law on there that they will accept it if it was outside the state, done by somebody outside the state, but their in-state notaries aren't allowed to do it.
Correct.
Okay. And that's what I've heard in the past. I've heard that in the past, and I never looked into it, but I was like, man, that's weird. Okay, so you'll accept it. So I could be in California, get my document e-notarized, but then if I'm outside of California and I call my friend Earl or I contact a notary and they can't do it because they're based in California, I was like,
right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I said, wow. And see, that's where I'll be honest, when I heard that, you know, like the old cartoons, the money symbols started clicking in my eyes because I was like, oh man, I said, that just opens up a wide range for Virginia notaries because we can do all 50 states. And I'm sitting here like, okay, bet. I'm gonna make sure I keep my stuff. And that's when I said, I got to find a platform to hop on and go from there. And I tell you, you know, I like the Ron, you know, as long as everybody got their act together, I'm good with it. You know, I do it. It gets done. I've even done people who are 90 some years old, which was weird because I had the son had to create email accounts for them on the fly in order for them to do, because they didn't have email. So he's doing it with his dad on a phone and his mom is on a laptop. And they're like 3 feet away from each other. So that feedback sound, I felt it and everything, but we got through it and all of that, you know. So now I will say the hardest part that I have with Doc Verify, and maybe with others, it's like that. Sometimes the document that the person doesn't sign, but there's a notarization form. If I don't put something on there to tell me to go look at it, I can miss it.
Yeah, so you have to look at all of them and make sure that they're tagged correctly.
And all of that.
You can't fix it on most platforms. Most platforms, once you're done, you're done. That was one of the things that I did address on mine, is it does allow you to modify a tag after it started, but before the first signer signs it. Right. And then if you don't catch it until the end, you can download and restart, so that you don't have to start all from scratch.
Right. And I've had to do it and normally when it gets rushed, it's a rush one. And I'll mess around and forget to put my notary stamp on something. And I'm like, tag on it. And I hit the button, it's all done. And then I'll download my copy and I just say, let me take a cursory look. And I miss one. Okay, let me get everybody on the phone. Hop back in. We got to redo this again.
Pay again.
And all of that. So one of the things that I end up, the way I do it is I have them send me the document, and I make sure I put my venue in there, replace and put the correct venue, because I learned the hard way that you can't modify the document with the venue and then trying to put the little X's to cover the, and then I try to put my initials on there, and my initial, the line is here, and my initial is way over. So I said, you know what? Send me the document. I'm gonna modify it with. That's why I got the full version of Adobe. Put Virginia Beach. I put the dates in there that I need to put in there. I put my stuff in there that I need to put in there, and then I save it, upload it, and then I can just drag and drop my signature, my notary stamp, and that little bit of prep time has made it so much easier and better for me to get in and get out, with it. I just have to remember to make sure, and I tell notaries all the time, after you go through and prep your document, do it 2 more times. I mean, really, and I just slow down. Even if the deed doesn't have the initial block on it, still go back and look at every single page.
Yep.
And
because as soon as you finish, you can't restart. You've got to go from the beginning. You've got to code them in. You've got to either have them do KBA or do personal knowledge again, and you've got to re-tag and everything.
Right. So yeah, so that's the thing. Now I do like on .verify, you can actually say don't send a notification out to them. So I didn't realize in the beginning. I stumbled across that. Again, you got to read what's in front of you. And I said, oh, I don't have to send a notification, and got it straight. All right. So your advice to people who are interested in Ron would basically be what?
All right. So if you are in a state that doesn't allow it yet, I definitely encourage going and learning about it, because eventually it's going to get there. It's going to get there. I mean, even states like California that are utmost opposed, eventually will flip the switch. Okay. And the faster that you can get up to speed, the faster you're going to be able to run with it. Now, if you are in a state that has it on the books, like say you're in Illinois, that it's going to activate next year, you need to still learn about it. Make sure you're up to speed, but you need to start spreading the awareness now to your clients that is something you're going to start offering. So that way, when you start offering it, it's not a flip of a switch and they're like, what? You can do what? They need to have that build up. They need to have that comfort level encouraged, so that when you go, oh, I'm so glad I could help you today, Sue. But, next time you get a hold of me, if it's after this date, we have this new feature and you won't believe how easy it's going to be. And we can do this all from your cell phone, and we can do it at any time. So you don't have to worry about me driving or you driving. And then Sue's going, oh, that's so cool. And not being sold on it, but being told and being educated that it's coming.
Right.
Then for the ones that already have it, my advice is know your technical skills, understand every aspect of that platform, know how to break it, because when you know how to break it, you know how to fix it.
Correct.
Okay.
I agree.
And then if you really want to do Ron, you got to lead. I always tell everyone when they're marketing this, you got to lead with where you want to take the client.
Okay.
So when someone calls me and they say, hey, I need a notary, I see that you're a notary, my response is, yeah, I can definitely help you. But I'm a virtual notary, so we do this all from our cell phone. Or somehow lead them with how you want them to go. If you're wanting it to be Ron, like you're getting a package that's a seller's package, reach out to title. Hey, I could offer this as a Ron or a remote online or a virtual notary. Would that be acceptable? The worst they're going to do is say no. You already got it. So, okay, you still go out in person. But, a seller's package, I do them all the time. They're easy.
Right. And that's mainly what I do.
Yeah.
I do seller packages. I think the biggest package I've done so far was 50 pages.
Yeah, and
And that
you
was
know,
only because of the deed.
yeah, and that's typically it. So I did 4 sellers packages that consisted of 8 pages each. Yeah, 30 pages, 4 closings, 30 minutes.
And that's why I say it's easy. Now, here's a big question. For notaries who are looking at getting training, okay, if they're hearing people offer training, what is it that they should be aware of and look out for so that they're getting properly trained in Ron?
So any trainer, if they're going to be teaching you legal aspects, are you allowed or not allowed to perform this quite a type of function?
Okay.
They need to be able to answer that question and not deviate the answer to someone else. So
Okay.
if you say, Amy, I'm in Alabama and I have a Ron law, can I do Ron? You know what my answer is going to be? No,
Mm-hmm.
because Alabama mislabeled their Ron law. It's not Ron, it's RIN. It's remote ink notarization.
Oh,
So
okay.
they call it a Ron law, but it's not legal for Ron in Alabama right now.
Mm,
So, you
okay.
know, you got to know. And if they can't answer and give you a decisive yes or no answer, then I would hesitate utilizing that person as a trainer.
Okay.
Um, the next thing would be whoever you go with should not be only pitching a certain platform. Okay.
Okay. Gotcha.
If someone were to come to me, for instance, and they say, here's what I need to do, here's what I want to do, here's my
Mm-hmm.
budget,
Okay.
my response is going to be, here's your options. I might be an
Okay.
option, but I may not be the only option. So
Correct.
you need to do your homework and figure out which one really falls into your funnel of where you want to be. Because every platform is different. Every platform offers different services. Like
Mm-hmm.
you said, some are hybrid, some are independent, some are employer based. There's
That is
lots of
correct.
different things. And then there's the added fees. You know, some platforms you pay a full upfront fee, but like Doc Verify, but it includes your stamp, it includes your seal, it includes everything. So
Right.
you don't have to do all of these little fees. Whereas, like if you came to mine, you have to purchase the digital certificate if it's required. Like in Virginia, it's required. In
Right.
Ohio, it's not. So different notaries would have different costs based upon those different platforms. So you
Okay.
have to understand what's included, what's not. Anyway, whoever it is needs to be able to explain all of those different aspects to you so that you can walk away from there empowered with your next steps. All
Gotcha.
right. Third, they need to have done it.
Yeah.
I mean, if
Yeah.
if you're going to teach something, you got to have done it. You've got to have real life situations to pull from. And Griffin, I want to let you know, my oldest client's 101 years old,
Wow.
and she did a Ron to prove that she was still alive for the country of Japan. And
Okay.
this little old lady told me how old she was and how she couldn't believe she was doing this online,
Mm-hmm.
both in English and Japanese, multiple
Wow.
times. I can't believe I'm doing this. This is just amazing. And then she would go into Japanese and say the same thing. And, having those kind of interactions, it makes it really cool. And, you know, with Ron, one of the things that anyone who's looking at getting training or providing
Mm-hmm.
training, they need to understand, they need to read every state law, every notarial, and sometimes probate law
Okay.
for these education purposes. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you another tidbit as to why. Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
So some states allow will to be done via Ron. Some say
Okay.
absolutely not. But some states like Nevada or Florida say you can, but
Okay.
it has to have these 3 or 4 questions. And once it's done, they have to be deposited. This electronic version of this
Mm-hmm.
has to be deposited into a qualified custodian account. In addition to that video, the electronic document has to be put in there. In
Okay.
addition to that document, the audit trail has to be put in there. In
Wow.
addition to that, a certification from the notary stating that they actually performed this over an electronic means
Okay.
has to be accompanied with all of those. So 4 things.
Right.
Okay. And those 4 things have to be in this qualified custodian account. And this qualified custodian has to be under certain parameters of the state law.
Wow.
And that qualified custodian will charge between $250 and $500 to do that for your client. So that's on top of the notarization. So if you get someone in Nevada or Florida that say, I need a will done, you need to ask the question, are you familiar with the term qualified custodian?
Right.
If they are, cool. Then they know what they need to do. If not, you might be notarizing a document that they may not know. They have extra things they have to do. Now, granted, I'm an Ohio notary. That law
Right.
pertains to a Florida notary. But if my client's in Florida and their probate's going to be in Florida, guess what law has to apply?
The Florida.
Florida.
I guess I better be a qualified custodian then.
Well, I would love to do that too, but they have to be a resident of the state of Florida or Nevada. Because I've looked at doing that and just opening it up as a business model, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would have to move to Florida in order to become a qualified custodian for just Florida, or move to Nevada to do it for just Nevada.
Gotcha. Well, notaries, Florida and Nevada,
Mm-hmm.
you better start Googling and looking into qualified custodian. And the reason why, because just like, there's years ago, I saw this story about a guy in Nevada, because, a lot of people will put in, they want to have a Nevada corporation or a Delaware corporation. And there was 2 guys, one in Delaware, one in Nevada, just sit at home. And then they would just be the registered agent for all of these different businesses. And he didn't have to work or nothing. So you getting $100, $200 for all of these people to say, yes, you can use my address as a registered agent. And he would receive legal documents. And at one point in time, when I first got out of the military, I thought about doing that. I was going to do that for the state of Virginia. And then I wound up getting a job and forgot all about it, for us doing it for myself. But I did know that. I said, okay, well, and I tell notaries even now, if you're trying to start your LLC and you're like, well, in Virginia, you got to have a registered agent. I said, okay, if you don't want to pay this company to be your registered agent, if you have a relative that is typically going to be home, you can just pay them to be your registered agent, since they're going to be home during the business hours. If they got a child that they're taking care of or things of that nature, even if you got this young son or daughter who's not too motivated to do a whole lot, you say, look, Monday through Friday, you're going to have your little happy butt here. You want to be a gamer? Fine, be a gamer and make sure you answer the door in case there's some legal stuff. And I'll pay you, I'll pay you some money each month to take care of this for me. Or if you have an in-law that's living with you that can't go anywhere, but they can answer the door, that's something. So that's just another way of having some funds come in or taking care of your own household and everything. So now with the training, what would be, if I'm coming to get trained in Ron, what is some of the, I guess you could say, modules or lessons that I should expect to see from that trainer that they should be trying to cover?
Okay. So first, I would want to know what a digital certificate is
Okay.
and how do I use it? How do I create a wet signed digital certificate signature, which is one of the things that most states require when you actually get approved with them. So
Okay.
you can't even be a Ron without doing it. So that's kind of important, right?
Yes.
The next thing would be understanding all of the different levels. What is KBA? How do I help my client? ID validation. How do I take the perfect photo?
Okay. Yeah. Photos.
Understanding what, understanding how to edit and correct a document so that the notarial block is legal for me. in
Okay.
Adobe or in the platform that I choose, however I have to do it. And oh my goodness, the technical aspects of how to tag a document,
Right.
being able to know when I tag it with the field name, I have to understand they're not just going to type their name, it's going to auto populate their name.
Right.
And I have to, like, I will use your platform as an example. When you've got everyone and they've check marked everything and they're on the side here, and you see where they've logged everything and they've done their KBA and they've written their name and adopted their signatures, right?
Right. Correct.
That's where you, the notary, can validate that they actually signed it with their correct legal name. Once you go to that next screen, they can't change it. So if
Okay.
they used initials instead of their full name, now you're not going to have a legally signed document. So if you were to say G.N Services as your name, and the document says Griffin Notary Services, well, title ain't going to take that.
Gotcha.
So you have to start all the way over. So understanding those points of where to stop and go, I need a 3-second review, before I move forward to ensure that it's correct.
Gotcha.
Those things with all the different platforms are different. Those areas are different with every single one, but you have to make sure that you hit that mark. And the other aspect would be, where can I do this from and who can I do it for?
Right.
And finally, how do I really market? Because there's a few tips, and I ain't going to give you all my gems on this
That's
one.
right. Nope. I
But
don't expect it.
I have finagled a few aspects, and there are some free ways to generate business through regular signing services. In addition to that, I do have a paid one. Like I do Thumbtack sometimes. I'll turn it on, turn it off.
Right.
And I've got 57 profiles, all under one profile. So 57 locations, so that I cover the entire US when I turned it on.
Gotcha.
And that generates revenue stream, generates public awareness as well, at least until they turn on. I think, my opinion here, they should have notary comes to me, I go to the notary, or notarize it online, right?
Yeah. Correct.
That would make my life a lot easier. But
I agree with that.
But I can't get Thumbtack to call me back yet. I got to get a little bit bigger before they'll pay attention a little on me. But marketing it is huge. And I'll give you one other gem. This is what I tell everyone who I talk to. Don't officially pay for a platform until you have a client. If you don't have a client, it's going to be just money you're spending and you're not going to get a return, and it's going to frustrate you.
Correct.
Sell it, get the awareness out there. Get legal, turn it into the state, get legal, but don't actually pay to start your subscription until you really have something sold.
I agree because with Doc Verify, I hopped on there, and because one of the things also, and I think you agree, like with Doc Verify, a lot of people don't know that you have to get the enterprise version of Doc Verify in order to do online notarizations. And I didn't realize that. And I don't know if they still do it, but they was doing these training sessions, and somewhere in their website, they had this thing where you can go and hop in on a training session. And that's where I found it. So it wasn't anything that was blaring in front of your face saying, hey, when you sign up and you want, if you dig through there, you can find it. So I found out that you had to have this enterprise thing. So I said, well, I'm gonna just do the $50 a month, just to see, So I got some money set aside. I'm gonna use that. And I wasn't getting anything. So, and this was like after 3 months, and I said, you know what? I ain't even gonna worry about this. And I canceled the thing. I knew I could always start it back. And I said, I'm gonna just cancel because nothing's happening. And then like 2 weeks after I canceled it, the opportunity to do a run came up. And I was like, all right. So I had to start back again. So I kicked on the $50, and and I've been doing them here and there, and it's been enough to where now it doesn't pay for the whole year subscription, but it's opening up doors of opportunity. It's there in case I need it, and I got enough business coming from my regular face to face that okay, it's probably paying out of, let's say, I think what 50 times it's like $600. So out of the 600 for the year, it's probably paying about it's about half right now. I would say I've made because I had two signings, and yeah, so between those two, so it actually paid. So actually this year, wow, when I think about it, it's actually paid about over $300 worth of that 600. So it's so even though, and I know some notaries are looking at it, I want to hit something every single month. Okay, if I got 600 that I'm paying for, and all of a sudden I get a month where I do three signings for 175 on there, okay, I'm good because I recoup that or a good portion of it back. So I'm not looking at it and limiting myself that it has to produce something every single month. But I've learned now that things are getting a little bit more popular, and once you get in good with a company like this law firm, you better be in a position to accommodate them. You know, so once I had turned it back on, I said, you know what, I'm gonna just work this business. And to be honest, this is where for my mentality is those trailing docs signings, those $25 here, $50 there, those loan mods, that actually helps pay for it. I get that money, and it's like, okay, I did $40 on this loan mod, I did $40 on a door knock, and I had the time to do it. Okay, that right there covers the $50 for this month, and then I end up next month having two or three closings that I can do on the platform. I'm like, okay, that's how I look at it, and it makes it like financially it makes it good, and it's actually at the end of the year covered. A good portion of it, either half or more that I paid out, is actually covered. So, and I know people are like, they don't want to spend a dime unless they definitively know. But I do agree, get that customer first. In a
Yes.
position to turn it on, get legal. And I even had to pay Dot Verify for their digital certificate because the one that I got for IdenTrust, for whatever reason, wouldn't work.
No, they don't
in there.
accept it.
Right. And they didn't, I didn't realize. So I just went, but the Dot Verify one is good for 5 years. So I was like, okay, so for 5 years, I said, okay, I'll just go on and pay the fee and everything. So I think I've finally made my startup costs back for getting on there. But I like the fact that I'm in a position that I could actually go if need be. If and people are finding me somehow. I haven't really marketed, but somehow they're contacting the state of Virginia. And I guess Virginia is giving them a list of notaries, and then they call me, and I also have it on my profiles on different sites and all of that. So somehow these companies are finding me and asking me, say, hey, can you do this notary for me? And I'm like, yeah. And I try to fit it in, and I get it done. And I honestly like it. I don't have a problem with it at all and stuff. So I guess we sort of talked about pitfalls, but is there any specific pitfalls or any things that you would like definitively want new notaries? Like somebody just got got their commission at the end of October, and here it is November, and they're like, I'm gonna be an online notary. What if advice you would have for them?
So that's an interesting one. And I see a lot of brand new notaries that jump right into the online notarization aspect,
Mm-hmm.
and they struggle. They struggle a lot
Okay.
because they've got to learn lots of different things all at once, whereas a long-term notary that's been traditional already knows. So you need to understand the notarial loose leaf certificates, because when you're a Ron, you're going to see notarial blocks from multiple different states, or even things people have written up themselves, or they're not even there at all. So you need to understand what is compliant for you and how to fix a notarial certificate that isn't compliant for you. Whether that's add it, whether that's you can add words to it, whatever makes it legal for you. So you need to understand that prospect. But in addition to that, there are lots of different notarial blocks. So, like if I'm doing one for Florida, It requires the checkbox of online or in person. If I'm doing one for California, it requires a whole lot more information in that notarial block. So I need to make sure that I'm filling it out complete and concisely every single time. So if I'm going to use that notarial block, I need to put everything in there and I need to put it in there the right way. If I'm going to do my own, that's great, but I need to add the extra information from the first block that's not compliant for me so that it's compliant for California or whatever state, because that client is going to turn it into that state and they're going to want to have those definitive factors. And in addition, just be aware of the different documents. You get powers of attorneys, where do they absolutely have to initial versus where is it optional to initial? What lines have to be filled in? What lines don't? If someone wants to do a car title, what's the best practice? Because when you scan or copy a car title, it says void or copy, and it doesn't look right. And people run into problems turning those into the BMV or title agencies because it says that watermark, it voided the document. There are other solutions out there, and you need to understand how to present those to the clients so that they can have an opportunity and not a hurdle. So understanding how can I pivot? How can I move this around? Another one is, the client's in jail. His sister can sit outside and do everything for him, but he can't physically touch that computer or that phone. So
Right.
what are my options? Because that has to be Iran. There's no other option for them.
Mm-hmm.
How do I make it possible for them? So again, that goes back to learning your platform and learning how to break it so that you can toggle or pivot and create a solution instead of a hurdle.
Gotcha. So, in other words, you need to be a good face-to-face notary before hopping on here. And to me, let me do this one. To me, that is important because we hear all the stories of all of these bad acting notaries out here, as I call them, the pandemic notaries. They're just out here doing all of this wild, crazy stuff. And see, you can't, I'll be honest, you cannot come into this here trying to upcharge and all this, that, and the other, like you do in face to face, because they would just excommunicate you quick, fast, and in a hurry. So if they come and tell you, hey, we're going to pay, because when you look at to me, the workload, they say, look, we can pay 125 to do this here. All right, cool. Because see, now you don't have that thing of, well, I'm printing out more than one piece of paper, and and I got the drive and I got the scan bag. You ain't got none of that. So just take the money, do the thing right, and keep going. However, as if anybody's followed my channel, which I think y'all have, you know that my biggest pet peeve is notaries not knowing how to notarize. You don't know how to notarize. You're sitting up here selling yourself. See, with the e-notary stuff, there's no, I'm going to give you some free donuts. I'm going to give you gift cards and all that. You ain't got none of that. Now it's all about you. See, being an e-notary, it's about your skill, your talent. See, you can woo them with all of this here and your little pretty hair and your shoes and your nice tie and all of that. And you can talk a good game when you're face to face with somebody. But when they just call you out of the blue and say, hey, look, we got this e-notary that needs to be done today at 5 p.m. Do you have time? It's either yes or no. And they said, we paying 125, or they said, what's your fee? And then you tell them the fee. They might, and then he's like, okay, well, what can you afford? Okay, you can afford that? Cool, no problem. I'll knock it out for you. And then you can't sit there and, like with Doc Verify, there is no holding documents hostage. Because once you do it, it emails to the client who signed it. So notaries, those of you who like to hold people's document hostage for more money, that ain't happening here. So in other words, that crazy stuff that you're doing out there face to face, you can't bring it here. And if you don't know how to notarize, it's going to show. It is going to show, because once you hit that thing, and especially the notaries who don't realize that they're supposed to put a stamp on the document. They're supposed to put, the line might be blank, so you got to add their name after it was, sworn and subscribed before me on this date by so and so and so and so, not your name, but their name. If you don't understand that kind of stuff, you will get in there thinking that, oh yeah, I'm making 150, $200 on this e-notary thing, and none of your documents are notarized properly. And they're gonna get you. They're gonna get you good because you've just wasted their time. You've wasted their time big time. Go for it, Amy.
Yeah. And I was going to add to that, you brought up a great point. When you're a mobile notary, you, in some states, as long as it's permitted by law, you can add appropriate travel. You can add administrative fees or convenience fees, things of that nature. But with Ron, with remote online, that gets limited. For instance, it says, like in Ohio, I can charge $25 per notarial act,
Correct. Same here.
but I'm not allowed to charge anything else. I can't charge a technology fee. I can't charge an administrative fee.
Or a doc prep fee.
Exactly. I'm not allowed to charge anything more than that. So I'm limited on what I can charge, but I'm also on the flip side limited to the competition out there because they can go to a big name brand company and have this document notarized for $25 and $6 for each additional stamp. So now my 3 stamp document that I said was $75, they're Googling and they're finding out they can get it done for $52 somewhere else. Guess what they're going to do?
Yeah.
So you have to watch and make sure that you're doing a fair market value. But then you also run into states like New Jersey. They only allow $2.50 per notarial act. Okay. No technology fee, nothing. So a 1 stamp document, they can only charge $2.50. So that really limits what that notary is willing to do because they're not going to make any money at it.
Correct.
So now Florida itemized it out. They could said the notary can charge this and they can charge that. They can charge this. Florida did it great when it comes to that, but they did not address credible witness, which I think was an oversight. I don't think they intended not to put it in there. I just don't think they thought that they needed it in there twice. Right. So,
Now, and for Virginia, I couldn't see, I don't recall seeing anything as to if we could charge additional fees for e-notary stuff. They didn't say we could. I don't think they said we couldn't or could. It just said we can do $25.
Yeah, it really depends on what the state defines as the notarial act.
Right.
So if you were an in-person notary and they said the notarial act, you can charge $5. They're not going to say the ink from your stamper, you can charge an additional 50 cents because that's supplies, right?
Correct.
That's a required supply. So in some states, they reference the technology as a supply. You can't perform this without that. So that becomes part of the notarial act. Okay. So therefore, you can't charge extra for your supply, just like you can't charge more for the ink that you used on that blotter to stamp that document.
Understand.
Because it's a supply. Gotcha. So it really comes down to how the Secretary of State defines the process of a notarial act.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I'll have to go back and look again and everything because I know, for face-to-face, because they consider a notarial act just each time I stamp, not per signature. So if there's 3 signatures for this one notarial act, and for this one I hit that thing once, I'm not charging for each one of the signatures. I'm just charging for
yours.
The stamp. Right. And people, when they call me to ask me, well, how much does it cost? Even with the face-to-face, I said, I say, here's my travel fee. And then for each time that I stamp the document, it's $5. And they're like, okay, because a lot of times for whatever they won't tell me how many notarization, notarial acknowledgments on the document. And they want to know how much it costs. So I say simply this: when you look at that document, each time you see notary public signature on there, that's $5. So that times that $5 plus my travel fee, there's your price. And they're like, oh, okay, got it. And then they still won't tell me until I get there. And then I have to sit there and, figure it out for them and all of that. But yeah. So now I wanted to bring here. Yeah. So this here is Amy's site, cyberizeit.com. And her website address is right down there at the bottom. That's her support. So talk about what you're doing and how you're helping notaries out with remote online notarizations?
Oh, definitely. So my platform's a hybrid. So you can sign up as a notary and you can bring your own clients, or you can possibly get connected to a client from our platform. A client can go and start a notarization and connect to any notary that's online.
Gotcha.
Um, I built this platform with just a standard monthly fee for the notary. As long as you use it to bill out, you don't have any additional fees.
Okay.
And in addition, we became a stamp manufacturer, so you don't have to have a stamp made or purchased. And the only expense would be if you are required to have a digital certificate that is independently validated. If you are, then you would have to purchase that. But you can use the same one that Notarize uses at Identitrust, so it can be recycled for us as well. That way, you're not putting the money out twice.
Gotcha.
We offer marketing tools. We offer tech support. We offer all kinds of different pivoting abilities, I guess I want to call it.
Hmm.
Some of the new features that I've got coming out that aren't even on the platform yet are, if you, Griffin, know Sally and she uses you a lot for Ron, you'll be able to go into her profile on your settings and say, always bypass KBA for Sally. So then every time Sally initiates a
Okay.
transaction with you, she never has to do KBA.
Gotcha.
If she ever connected to a different notary for any reason, then she would have to. But for you and you
Right.
alone, you know her. So she doesn't have to go through that hassle. You know, we've really worked hard to do that, to think outside of the box where other areas have issues, other platforms have issues. How can I fix it? How can I change it? You know, one of the other aspects is the encryption level of the document. So
Okay.
all platforms meet the standardization by law. And I want to go on record to say that upfront and honest, they meet the legal standardization. But there are platforms where you could do a file print to PDF,
Hmm.
and you can alter that document afterwards to the extent of removing a signature or removing a notary stamp and putting it on a completely different document. Now, it's not going to have the digital trail. It's not going to have the
Right.
digital certificate on the soft copy, but you could print that and turn that into someone and they would never know it was not the same document.
Gotcha.
So on mine, I made sure that it typically will say this document can't be print to PDF. It's encrypted. But sometimes Adobe changes this on me. But even if you do print it to PDF, the signature breaks in half. So
Gotcha.
you can't just cut and copy and paste it on another document unless you've got some real skills.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about yours or your client's signature being altered and moved to a different document. That was an important aspect for me. So yeah, that's a little bit different. But yeah, see, those are all the different areas. Marketing tools, the platform training. I broke down every single aspect into a 3-minute or less video, so you
Okay.
can study that individual segment. Example documents, you know, how to apostille, if they can't connect on Zoom, or what if they don't have an email address? Like you had that in one instance. They didn't
Hmm.
have email, but they had cell phones, right?
Right.
So I've initiated a pattern that allows a client to do KBA, ID validation, and sign the document just from text message links.
Okay. Cool.
So they don't ever have to go in and do anything more than that. So if they don't have an email, you can do that. And I've put that information out there so that people can see it.
Okay. That sounds good. That sounds good. Yeah. So now see, yeah, this is the information that I wanted people to get, and I really appreciate that. It's cleared up a lot of stuff for me, to be honest. Because I'm the type of person that, yeah, as y'all know, I talk a lot on my channel, and I deal with some of everything. But a lot of people say, "Well, I notice you don't talk a lot about Ron." Well, I understand Ron for myself. I don't understand it enough to try to share with people, just like, okay, let me educate you on it. So I know better than to do that. I'm, at 54 years old, I've learned, okay, there's just some roads you don't go down. And it's always best to get somebody who's more apt to be able to explain that. And there's no shame on my side that I can't explain it. It's just not something that I ever thought to like get into trying to educate, because people are struggling so hard on the face-to-face notarizations. Why would I start trying to help you or tell you to do the e-notary stuff or Ron Notary when I already know you're struggling and you can't even, notarize yourself out of a paper bag sometimes, because you got all this misinformation that you've had from the face-to-face notary training, and then you got the e-notary training that can be all off kilter. And it's like, no, I don't want to do anything that's going to confuse notaries even more. So I said I'll just bide my time, and as I come across people organically who has the background and the knowledge base, I'm gonna lend a platform to them and allow them, just like the apostille stuff. I don't even touch the apostille. I know there's multiple people teaching it. I don't even understand whether I can do it in Virginia or not. I called them one time and asked them about that, and they sort of shut me down. Was like, "Well, nah, we don't need you. We got this." And I was like, "Okay, I'm not even gonna worry about that." And then fast forward a year later, year and a half later, it's like everybody's teaching apostille, and I'm like, "Okay, but does your state allow you to be a part of it?" Just like I found out about immigration paperwork, in California they allowed them to do it, but in Virginia, no. So my whole point is, people, whatever people tell you you can do as a notary, you need to find out whether it's valid in your state, and then is it something that you even want to really engage in, because sometimes the logistics of doing this quote unquote money maker may be more than what you really want to deal with. And I think doing Ron Notary stuff is a good money maker, but for some people the logistics of the digital certificates and all of that may be more than what they want. You gotta, I mean, like, one of the things, like, I'm downstairs, and my route, I got two routers. I got a switch upstairs, and then I have the main one down here. So I know at any point in time, if my internet wirelessly starts acting up, I got a 200-foot cat 6 cable that I can whip out and run from upstairs to down here, boom, and I'm good to go. Most notaries don't have that. Most notaries don't even have a cat 5, a cat 6. They don't have cat nothing, okay, in their house to be able to hook up wired into for the internet. And see, that's my backup. Prefer wireless, but I already know that if the wireless starts acting up, being all janky, because one time when I was doing dot verify, wirelessly was acting up, and I got two of them. I got one that's 100-foot, and I got one that's 200-foot, depending on where I'm at in the house. And that 200-foot can reach anywhere in the house. My wife doesn't necessarily like the she look here, she come home and like, okay, what are you doing? And I got wires all over the place. But that's the thing, I have that, backup microphones, all of that. So the logistics to be able to do that, even now I have a backup laptop, and I'm setting that up. So if this laptop all of a sudden cranks out on me, I even have a ups over here. So if I had to, I can just load everything up into the ups and keep going. So the logistics of things, sometimes people don't want to involve in, even though it's a good money maker and all of that. So I'm gonna let you finish us out, Amy, with anything you want to share with people, anything that they need to know and all of that. Y'all have her email up here, support@cyberize.com, and go for it, Amy.
I'm going to second you on having that backup supply. So I actually have a hotspot as my backup, because
Gotcha.
typically if my internet goes out, it's out completely. So even a
Okay.
wire, it isn't going to help me. But also knowing whether or not you can do the notarization on hotspot, like on your instance, your platform won't allow it. Just so you know,
Okay.
I've tried it; it won't work. So you definitely have to have that in there, and yes, you have to have that. You have to have that notary bag, just like any regular notary. It's just your
Hmm.
bag's a little different, you know. But thank you for the time today. I hope that you were able to see the complexities. And I don't want to scare anyone off. It's really easy once you get going. It's just getting up there and getting going. It's very intimidating, a little overwhelming, and frustrating. I mean, even, I started this, I did my first Ron January 1st this year.
Okay.
Okay. Had my certification beforehand, didn't do anything with it. And once I started doing it, it got better. It got easier.
Right.
I learned, okay, you can't do it this way. I gotta do it that way. So you really got to have that open mind that you can face any kind of adversity, whether it be the client can't connect or you can't connect or whatever it is. And you got to have that ability to go, okay, that didn't work. Let's do this way. Let's do that way,
Yeah.
and being creative in those solutions will help you tremendously. So, and I will tell you, it's very rewarding. And I know a lot, that was the other aspect we really didn't touch on, is the personal factor.
Mm-hmm.
My clients love me. I engage. I talk about video games. I talk about DJing. I talk about art. I have sang Broadway musicals with people. Okay. I still get that engagement with my clients. And usually they need it, because once they've done all the technical aspects, they're irritated, if not more. And they just want it to be done. And then they realize, oh, we're only halfway through. Come on, So having that personality that you can calm them down without them actually knowing you're calming them down will take you a lot further. And understanding their frustration may not be because they're intimidated or pressured, but because they're stressed over the technology, which, if someone's signing a power of attorney and they're sitting there, fine. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that someone's making them do it. It means they're just sick of doing it and they want to be done.
Correct.
And you got to narrow down, okay, are they really being forced, or are they just really stressed? So you really do have to have that engagement. It's not just a computer for them. It is a solution. It's a provider, but it's sometimes it's a hard pill for the clients to swallow to get through. So, keeping that in mind will help too. And I hope that everyone in here does venture into at least the education piece on Ron. Learn the different aspects. What is legal in my state? Where can I go from it? What platforms are legal? Does my state even guide what platforms to use?
Right.
Every state is different, and it's too much to put into an hour or hour and a half long show. That's it's you could do a whole hour on what state allows what, on what platform can be used. And why, because they do different things. So definitely look at all the aspects. If you are going to go into formal training, make sure that whoever's training you actually trains you. Don't just buy a whole bunch of videos. That frustrates me. Unless you learn by videos or multiple interviews, if that's how you learn, that's great. I don't learn like that. I don't like it like that. So understand the product you're going to get. Maybe get a free sample. A true leader would give you a free sample of what you're going to get. An agenda, a list of what your topics are going to cover, even what you'll be able to do when the outcome is done. And extra bonus points if they're actually certified through the state to present classes, because that right there would seal the deal for me. So.
Because you teaching something about this state's run. And again, I just believe in disclaimers. I'm old school, like they used to have the TV commercials, and they'll be showing the Ronco sewing machine or the Ronco cooking thing, and they will say at the bottom, not available in California, Montana, Missouri. And they let you know that, hey, you see this in California because we're a nationwide advertisement or a nationwide TV show, but we can't sell you that in there. So if you do this, then that's on you. So there's guidelines and regulations and stuff. And that's really what I'm advocating, is that we, as anybody who's calling themselves a notary trainer, even though I don't agree that you can be a notary trainer after only been in this business 6 months. I mean, that's, but if you're going to take on that responsibility, then you need to make sure that you give people the option and educate them whether or not what you have for them is really for them. And if it's not, then you need to let them know so that they're not wasting their money on that. And then you have a bunch of angry notaries, and then that anger notary goes in doing a face to face, and they're mad because they just realized they lost $150 with you and can't get it back. And they sitting up there frustrated, and that creates a bad experience for that face to face client, and then that can hurt their business. So now they can't do Ron, and they done messed up and ticked off the signers and the signing company and the lender and all. You see what I'm saying? So, and I know people like, man,
It
you just going to
snowballs.
extreme, but
No, it
it does.
snowballs.
It can snowball like that because you don't know how people's personalities are. And there are people out here that one bad thing happened to them and it can just snowball across the board into a whole bunch of things. And that when they wake up the next morning, like, did I really do that? Yes. And then when you look at the catalyst of it, what was the point of origin? I felt like I got taken advantage of over here with this Ron thing. And I was just mad after that. And wow, I was really a jerk to everybody that came across me because I felt like I was a fool for falling for this. And it happens. It happens. So I know somebody's going to say, Griff, I thought you were giving her the last word. I know they're gonna
But
say
they're
it, so that's
good.
why
They're
I'm
good
addressing it
words.
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I know somebody gonna say that, like, Griff, you were gonna give her the last word and this, that, and the other, and what's wrong with you? And then they're gonna give me a thumbs down because I didn't give you that. So I'm gonna throw it back to you. So now Amy has the last word.
Well, it was a pleasure. I hope everyone definitely checks out our site at cyberizeit.com. Feel free to call or text us. We respond to both, believe it or not, and we'll try to get answers to you. I get a lot of people that ask me very general questions, so please don't be offended if my response back to you is, what do you mean? Can you give me more information? Have you read your law?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm only going to narrow that down quickly, and I'm going to give you a really quick 1 or 2 word answer if I can. So I'll definitely help you do that. And then we also have all of the training for free on the site, so you can see the entire transaction, all of the different aspects of it, as well as what we
Okay.
offer versus what others do. And, you know, again, all of the people here are, everyone who answers is notary on my platform, and even my husband, who was just hollering at me a minute ago to tell you, make sure I don't forget about the videos. But, in addition to that, we are out there spreading the word. Everyone sees me. I know y'all do.
Yeah.
I'm on Clubhouse, I'm on Facebook, but at the same time, I'm out there trying to educate. I want people to be aware. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, on the flip side of that, I'm also out there in the general public. I'm doing different agreements. So yesterday we got a contract with Montana, and we're going to roll out the first Ron approved title for vehicle transfers
Gotcha.
with the state of Montana. It went live yesterday. So that is, we're out there and we're doing that. And I'm putting out national ads and increasing public awareness through radio ads, because the first stop is getting the clients to understand it's legal. And the
Right.
first stop is that awareness. So as much as you all see me, the clients are seeing it too. I don't
Right.
just stop at the notary. My
Okay.
perspective is I want the awareness everywhere. So I hope that everyone sees that. I hope you all give us a chance to at least give you a little more detail. And I look forward to seeing everyone or hearing them, depending on the social media outlet, in the near future. Thank you
All
again,
right.
Griffin, for the time today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, everybody, I'm ending it. So there's no me taking her last word or any of that. Okay. So thank y'all very much. Don't hop out the session just yet, Amy. But everybody, thank y'all very much. Hit the replay. Look at this again and again. Feel free to share it out to all of your buddies and other people. And everything's going to be